Today we'll be talking to. Hello everyone, very excited to have you all here. Today we'll be talking to representatives from one of the most prestigious universities in the world, and we'll try to address a few queries about the general situations and circumstances Indian students face whilst applying, and what we can make to make the whole procedure seamless and increase the availability of information as people who are working in the education industry. So I'd like to introduce everyone before we move ahead. We have Mr. Gaurav Chabra from the University of Alberta. We have Mr. Ramayatha Varghese from the University of Queensland, and we have Mr. Prathamesh from Ohio University. Hello everyone, and we are very glad to have you here. I'm sure all our viewers are very excited to listen to you because we're bringing experience from different countries, and just because there's a lot of questions that students have specifically with respect to comparisons and seeing how each country treats students differently and what opportunities we have there. So I'll allow you to introduce yourself for a minute before we start with the questions and get the discussion started. Prathamesh. Prathamesh, are you? Can you hear us? Yeah.
Sure. I just didn't know if I had to go first. Anyway, my name is Prathamesh, and I serve as the India Admissions Advisor at Ohio University. I come from a communications background, and I have been an international student myself. So, been there, done that. And that just helps me to relate with students and parents really well. And I'm happy to be here and to talk to you guys about studying in the United States. Thank you.
Ramayatha, and please correct me if I'm pronouncing your
Yes.
name. Yeah.
It's easy for you. I think you can call me Remy. The name is a little complicated. That's okay. Yes, my name is Remy. I am the Senior Recruitment Advisor for the University of Queensland. I'm based here in India. And yeah, if you have more questions about UQ, and I'm looking forward to answering all your questions today.
Very
Thanks.
nice. Gaurav.
Sure. Thanks, Vijit. First of all, giving this opportunity to be here and interact with all the students. So my name is Gaurav Chabra. I'm the representative of University of Alberta in India. I have been in the education industry for a little over 10 years now. I have initially worked with the British High Commission, then Australian High Commission, and now eventually managing a University of Canada. Look forward to have an interactive session today, and thank you so much.
Yeah. Yeah. So of course, let's start. I think the application procedures for different countries are going to start now. Students are considering which countries to apply to. They're finalizing college lists, starting to work on writing requirements, and so on and so forth. So we'll start with choosing which country is the most ideal to apply, right? And again, during COVID, one of the most pertinent questions that is being asked, and Remy, I'm looking at you as I ask this, is remote education. Is that something that is that something that is keeping students at any disadvantage? And when are things expected to change in Australia with respect to colleges opening up for international students? Remy, you're muted.
Well, that's a good question because the entire world has changed and all of us are moving ahead in that direction. So, as situations are changing, we are all learning to change as well. So, it is a disadvantage that students are not able to study on campus. But as a university, we are trying our best to make sure that students have an advantage or they have an experience that is closer to studying on campus. Now, with regard to that, we have a couple of touch points that I can talk about in terms of students getting a tuition fee rebate for studying if they are choosing to study online, getting good amount of support in terms of faculty support, all the facilities, including libraries, the clubs and societies, networking sessions, everything going virtual. So students from every part of the world, wherever they are, they can actually experience all of these virtually. Now, in terms of students wanting to come to study on campus and avail their post-study work visa, Australian government has also given the consent or that great news that even if they are studying
Yeah.
online, they are not going to be disadvantaged. Their study
Very
period
important.
online is going to be considered towards their post-study work visa. So that is not something that is going to disadvantage them. At the same time, a good amount of scholarships to support students in the present situation has been launched. So I think altogether, though there is a disadvantage, there is still a silver lining. There is still a way we can navigate through and still have a great experience studying online.
Definitely, definitely. Two key takeaways from that. First is that you will still be eligible for the regular work visa and the regular work permit as if you literally went to college. And secondly, yes, Australia has been emerging recently as a very pertinent scholarship destination. So thank you so much, Remy. Gaurav and of course Anisha, I'll approach your question very soon. It's a very important question. But Gaurav, I want to understand, when we talk about Canada and also the United States, Prathamesh, I'd also like you to jump into this. Is how we calculate equivalency of education, especially for master's degrees, right? Because as we know, most arts and science and business degrees in India at the undergraduate level are 3 years long, whereas most of the degrees in Canada and US are 4 years long, right? I understand that most US universities tend to be very flexible in terms of accepting 3 year programs. But what Gaurav, why don't you shed some light on how Indian students, if they have completed a 3 year program, can still do a master's degree in psychology or business or any field in Canada, especially University of Alberta?
Sure, definitely. So the very first point that I would like to put emphasis here is that for all the master's programs, specifically at University of Alberta, yes, 16 years of education, Indian education is what we require. So we understand that all major programs apart from BTech, I understand, is a 3 years degree in India. But in Canada, we require a 4 year program. So in order to avoid that kind of a situation, what we generally recommend students is that if they have taken the admission already in some of the Indian institute, then they can apply as a transfer student to the University of Alberta. So we allow them to have as high as credits for maximum of 2 years. So if they have completed their first year or second year from the Indian Institute and then they apply as a transfer student, then they can get the credits of the portion which are similar to what they have studied and what we teach. And then they can continue from the same place and just complete their 4 years in total and then be eligible for a master's degree. So
Yeah,
that's
a small follow-up on that, because this is what Anisha Solanki also asked, that if you complete your first year at Delhi University, which is like an undergraduate program in business or commerce or arts, can you then apply as a transfer student at the undergraduate level to Canada in the second year or something?
Yes, definitely they can. So as I said, we do give maximum of 2 years of credit. So if a student, let's suppose it is in the first year, and though it's not realistic, but let's suppose if the 100% program they have studied and what we teach is absolutely same, then they don't really have to study the first year of the University of Alberta program, and they can rightly continue from the second year onwards. However, if let's suppose it's 6 months or 8 months content which is similar, so they'll get the credits for that and they can continue after that from the University of Alberta. So yes, that is definitely possible, and that's what we in fact suggest to students if they intend to study masters from University of Alberta, or in fact for that matter most of the universities in Canada.
All right, very important. So basically, it's always a good possibility, be it for bachelor's or masters, to apply as a transfer student. Canadian universities are very transparent and very receptive of converting credits into their own system and letting you continue from there. Prathamesh, I'd also like you to jump in. With respect to this 16-year versus 15-year education scenario, is that does US universities, specifically Ohio University, do you follow a similar kind of policy, or is there a more flexible or a different policy that's there?
So, Vijit, I handle the undergraduate side of things. So,
Yeah.
as much as I would love to share, I don't want to because I'm not sure about it. But I can say that US, most US institutions do require 16 years of education
Yeah.
to apply for the master's programs. And for the transfer programs, US welcomes transfer students. In fact,
Yeah.
Ohio University is a transfer friendly school. We do get a lot of transfer students from India. So as you rightly said, if you have enrolled in any institution in India or maybe in Australia or Canada, you can take a transfer to a US university. But they do have a requirement that you need to complete at least 2 years with that institution to get a degree from them. So that's
Yeah.
something that I would like to highlight here. Yeah.
So basically, you need to do your junior and senior year there. You can still transfer after your sophomore year, but you need to do your junior and senior year there. That's a
Yes.
very good insight. We have a few people asking about standardized tests and which country requires what testing. I think I'll give a generalized answer before I start with the actual question I want to get to. For at the undergraduate level, standardized testing is not really a requirement unless you want to do specific professional courses in the United Kingdom, which of course is not a thing that we are discussing very specifically today. What I would like to ask, of course, is about the SAT and the ACT. I understand US universities have made it test optional, even though they had a hard and fast requirement before that. But I also want to understand, how does taking the SAT and ACT help your application in Canada and in Australia, right? So I'd like to start with Prathamesh here, but I would like each of your insights on this specific question about standardized testing. Not just the SAT, what tests can you take as an undergraduate student to increase your application chances in these countries? Prathamesh?
Yeah, for US, I think SAT and ACT is what you can take. US universities accept both. If you're applying only to US universities, ACT is your test. And if you want to apply to countries outside of the US, you take SAT, because some countries do accept SAT. And yes, that does increase your chances of getting a higher scholarship. And also, it's a good way to show your academic capabilities. If you're confident that you will get a good score, sometimes that can do more harm than good. Like if you submit a low score, then that can go against you as well. So be very careful. US institutions, some are test optional, like we are, wherein we do not require your SAT or ACT test scores for admission or scholarships. Some are test blind, which means that they do not, even
Like
if you
the
submit
UCs,
the
the
score,
University
they
of
are not
Calicut.
going to consider it, as part of your review. And some are test flexible, wherein you can give the other tests, like you have your AP exams, or you have your A levels, your CLEP exam. So all of these can be submitted as part of your profile. So that's about the standardized tests. And about your question, which other exams can students give? I think AP exams are the best, because
Yeah.
they also give you some credits even before you enroll or start at a US institution. And since US is a credit based system, it just helps in reducing your graduation time. Like a typical student would take 4 years to complete their undergraduate degree. But if you already have some credits in your kitty, then you can graduate in like 3.5 to 3 years. And that means that you can save on a lot of money, which a lot of international students are looking for, right? So yeah, AP exams would be my suggestion to the students that are listening in.
Yeah. Before we move on to Gaurav, I'd like to address a couple of questions. Medicine in the US. So in US and Canada, both these countries, medical school conventionally and typically is not an undergraduate degree. You first need to do a pre-med degree or a degree in a related field, and then you do an MD from a medical school, right? The same goes for law in these countries as well. So if you want to become a lawyer, if you want to become a doctor in US or Canada, first do a pre-law or a pre-med degree, probably in something like biology or microbiology, biochemistry. Or for law, you can do it in political science or international relations or any of these fields. But yes, Gaurav, like testing that is essential, that is required, that increases your chance of acceptance and scholarship at the University of Alberta.
Right. So at University of Alberta, undergraduate programs, admission into a program is purely based on the academics. So basically, what we see at the time of admission is their class 10 performance and the predicted scores of class 12. Based on these two documents, we give them the conditional offer letter, and eventually, once they submit their final marks, they get the unconditional offer letter. So no extra exam, SAT, or the AP or anything of that sort is required. Now, when a student asks this question, there's a simple answer. We don't recommend a student to go for any of the extra exams. However, if they have already taken that, like for example, SAT exam, and they have good scores, they can submit that. So we will give them the admission either based on their academics or their SAT scores, whichever is better out of the two. So that's how we work. We don't ask them to go for it as an option to not, if they don't have an exam as in good scores in their 10th and 12th. Yes, they can choose that way to get admission at University of Alberta, but we don't ask them to go for it actively. Second thing, the other thing, if they take AP, then yes, they do get credits at University of Alberta as well, depending on the scores they get and everything. But again, to say the same thing, we don't ask them to go for it actively.
Yeah. All right, Remy, as before you answer this, I also want you to pitch in, add on to something else. Is that for Australia, of course, beyond your academic scores, what are the few things that you would recommend students to? If I'm 11th standard student, I want to go to Australia. What would be the focus points that you would like me to focus on over the next 2 years?
Great. So even for us, we have 15 years of education that we very well accept, except for a student. Uh, okay, so this is undergraduate, so that's the focus. So let me talk about that then. So we don't need any additional examinations for us. We accept 15 years of education for you to get into a bachelor's. Now, except for, like you said, a doctor of medicine, if a student is getting into, then of course your ISAT and your UCAT
Yeah,
is an exam that we would need, right? So that is an exception. Otherwise, everything is quite clean. Now, if a student is looking into applying for scholarships, that's where all of these extra things that you have done comes into the picture. And at the same
yeah,
time, please know that University of Queensland is a top ranked university. We're in the top 50 in the world, and obviously there is competition to get in. So we generally attract really high scores into the bachelor's degree, and with that of course comes a lot of competition for you to compete with fellow students. So whatever you do in terms of your extracurricular, definitely that shows your leadership skills, your people skills, all of these skill sets in the back end or in the background. Now, when you apply for scholarships, we have two types of scholarships. I'm sure Vijit, you would talk about it, but since you asked me if you're applying for scholarships, what would you need additional? There are no
of course.
test scores that you would need except for your IELTS,
Yeah,
but you would require yourself to have a personal motivation statement and a CV, which is actually rich with all the other experiences that you have. So
yeah.
that is the only thing. So there is no other examinations that you would require.
Fantastic,
And
fantastic.
even to make your application stronger, again, to make your application stronger, it is purely based on merit, like how Gaurav said. That's the same methodology that we apply.
Yeah, perfect, perfect. I think there's a lot of questions about postgraduate admissions in Australia as well. So could you please continue as what we started off with in terms of degree equivalencies in 15 years versus 16 years?
Yes, so since we accept 15 years, we don't have a requirement of 16 years, except
Exactly.
for a student who is looking at a Master of Psychology. So, for a Master of Psychology, if you're applying to Australia, you will require a 4 years degree. And that is where most of our students are stuck because they're not able to do a Master of Psychology unless they complete a 4 years degree, which is APAC accredited. And also, they have to go for a assessment with the Australian Psychological Society, because for you to register there as a psychologist, you will require a 6 years degree. So that is one program where you will require a 16 years of education. Otherwise, it is basically 15 years. Again, entry into the postgraduate program is quite similar, except for the behavioral sciences courses. Now, behavioral sciences courses are quite in demand in most of the foreign countries. Example of courses are psychology. You talk about nursing. You talk about counseling, physiotherapy. All of these are quota programs. So these have very limited number of seats when a student apply. They're competing among 600, 700
Yeah,
applicants for about 30, 40 seats, correct? So in that case, by default, your GPA requirements goes up. So equivalency wise, if you check, Australia have something called a NUSA guide where we have sectioned the universities as section 1, section 2, section 3. Now, whatever is the requirement, now it is very tricky to tell you what is the requirement exactly, because the calculation is done based on which section you are and what is the minimum pass mark for you in a subject in that particular course. So we then rate it. So whatever is the requirement for a section 1, the section 2 will require 5% more, and a section 3 will require a 10% more. So we are making
yeah,
it tougher for a section 3 to ensure that we pull in the right quality in together, right?
exactly.
And again, there are competitions. When I said quota programs which has got limited seats, you will also be crossing couple of interview rounds. You will also be writing additional personal statements, all of these. So it is very it is not generic, it is in particular to the program. But yeah, as we go, maybe we would know about it. So that's that in a nutshell.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I think generally, I think Prathamesh goes without saying. Of course, profile is a very, very, very important requirement in the US because I'd just like to point out that US is one of the few countries that, or as an exception also, where it says that we we evaluate candidates holistically, and therefore it's important for you to develop a good profile, get involved in different extracurricular and co-curricular activities, and just build up a good CV. Because of course, like getting a scholarship, even if it is on a hard and fast requirement for entry in Australia or entry in Canada, I'm sure scholarships are always given to students who deserve it the most, especially in top universities, representatives who we are meeting today, right? What I want to understand next, of course, and we did touch upon this when Remy spoke about the work visa permits and things like that in Australia. Pratmesh, I'd like to ask you about the STEM designation. Yeah, in US. Of course, like it's like the name sounds like science subjects, mathematics, and all of that, but some business courses are also STEM designated. So what does the STEM designation mean? Like what is the value of it? What if a course is not STEM designated? Is that really putting students at a disadvantage? So what is your perspective on that?
That's a great question, and I would like to bust this myth that, just because a program is a STEM program doesn't mean that, the non-STEM programs are bad, or, you shouldn't study the non-STEM programs. It's just that you get an advantage to kind of stay back in the country.
Yeah.
Whereas non-STEM students only get 12 months of OPT, optional practical training,
Yeah.
and STEM students will get about 36 months.
Yeah.
But yeah, STEM programs, essentially science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, the programs that fall under these categories, they are classified as STEM designated majors. And again, we have at Ohio University one major at the College of Business called Management and Strategic Leadership, which is a STEM designated major,
Exactly.
but it may not be the case with, say, another institution. So you really
Yeah.
have to check with the advisor or the admissions office about the STEM designation of a program. Also, even if you have signed up for a STEM designated major, chances are that the designation may change. That again,
Exactly.
depends on the government.
The visa office.
So yeah. So not the visa office, but there is a separate department called ICE. So they kind of classify these programs. So you really need to, check with the college about that STEM designation. But yeah, you have an advantage, as I said. So you can do your practical training, whatever you've studied. You can work in that field and get some experience. And also,
Exactly.
if you're lucky, the employer that you're working for can just absorb you, and then that will
You get
your
a work
visa
visa.
will be converted from a F1 to H1B, as you all know. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's about the STEM designation. Yeah.
Thank you so much. What about again like to pick up from something that Remy said specifically about psychology, right? Because psychology is one of the very interesting fields which is on the intersection of medicine and liberal arts, because it can be conceptualized in either of the ways, which is what makes it slightly complicated degree. I'm sure the reason behind Australia having a stricter requirement for psychology is because it's also medicine now. In our modern world, we also see mental health as a very integral part of health. Therefore, we want to have additional requirements and additional certifications to establish certain qualities across the world, right? But tell me about Canada. What kind of certifications do you need to practice? Because Canada is obviously a desirable PR destination for Indian students. Students looking to settle abroad do go there. So somebody looking to pursue psychology, at the master's level, at the bachelor's level, what is the scope and what is the kind of certifications that you need to go through there?
Okay, so first of all, Vijit, I unfortunately won't be able to talk about the master's program because I manage the recruitment only for UG programs, just like Pratmesh. So, but what I can definitely tell you is, yes, as you said, since last couple of years, there's a increase in the interest among the students, specifically for the psychology program, as you said, which we have seen. So yes, we also do offer psychology program at University of Alberta. We provide this option in the Faculty of Arts as well as Faculty of Science. Now, one challenge that students specifically face, especially from Indian curriculum, is that they don't really study mathematics in their class 11th and 12th. However, mathematics is one of the mandate requirements to study psychology at University of Alberta, irrespective whether they are studying under the arts faculty or science faculty. So this is one thing which they have to be sure of. If they are in class 10th right now and they have this option to select psychology as well as maths, so then they should be selecting this, irrespective whether maths is an additional subject or is one of the 5 main subjects, but maths should be there. So that's one
Yeah.
thing. Apart from that, after studying psychology program, yes, you can do your clinical psychology. You have to take the license in Canada, and then eventually you can go towards the path of getting PR and settle down there. So yes, that option is definitely there. And just to come back to the previous point, which I was talking about mathematics, just because student doesn't have a mathematics does not mean they can't take an admission. There are way out. So we allow students to go for either the SAT 2, which is the SAT subject specific exam, and obviously they have to go for maths. And if they score minimum 600 marks out of 800 in that, then we consider their maths requirement as met. Or the alternate is they can go for virtual high school maths exam, and if they clear that, then also their maths requirement is considered met. And that, along with their class 10th and 12th results, they can take admission at the University of Alberta.
Thank you. Shazia, to answer your question better, like even though Alberta requires maths for both B and BSc degrees, there are other colleges, in Canada which are accepting students without maths in the BA degree, right? The BSc degree everywhere is having a mathematics requirement, but you can apply to places like Waterloo, UBC, McGill without a mathematics for the BA program. So if you don't have maths and you want to study psychology in Canada, it's not an issue at all. In the US, of course, it's never been an issue because US does not have hard and fast academic requirements for most courses. But of course, you can try to go ahead for these programs. Now, Pratmesh, again, something that we were discussing before as well, for scholarships and even for admits, right? In terms of profile requirements, because profile is the key for US. We might talk about that, right? So, of course, there are a lot of activities that we recommend to students as counselors, as social projects, research papers and research projects, summer schools. Some of them are credit bearing, of course. Cornell and UC Berkeley have amazing programs. Yeah. So there are these like set of activities that we know that US colleges are interested in. Like, is there something that you feel as a recruiter, when you look at Indian applicants, you feel that there are some things that Indian students aren't doing specifically, or there's some students, some activities, specific ones that you wish students would do more of, right? So what are these things that we students miss out whilst we are building our CVs and, preparing to go to the US from the 9th and 10th standard onwards?
Yeah, again, that's a interesting question, and we get a lot of questions about this from the students and parents. But I, tell them that don't do anything and everything.
Yeah.
Don't try to beat yourself to do activities that you're just not interested in or you're just not passionate about. That is not what the admissions office or the university wants to see. Even if it's one meaningful activity, that you're interested in, that you're genuinely passionate about, or that is related to your major, that gets counted.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, for example, if you're applying for a computer science program, and if you've done, some graphic designing work at your school or outside the school, or if you've participated in hackathons, that just tells the admissions officer about your interest in the field. So that's what I mean. Similarly, for different majors, there are certain activities that you can go for. Like if you're applying for a journalism major, and if you've participated in any, say, spelling bee competitions or any, debates, then that really shows your passion towards the field. So this is what I generally recommend. So don't kind of try to mold yourself as per the college. There are immense choices. It's a very good time to be a student right now, and especially in the US, there are so many institutions, more than 4,500 plus. So always try to find your best fit. I'm sure that there is some university out there that will accept you the way you are. So that is the advice that I generally give out to students, and I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that's very important actually. Like overall, your profile and your CV should reflect who you are and should reflect your interests, right? Because US, of course, there's a lot of focus on essays. Like admission committees, I know for a fact, spend a lot of time reading those and then collating that with the activities list, with the with the course that you have applied for. So it's very important to do two things. Firstly, do the right activities, and secondly, ensure that all the activities are giving out one unified story about yourself. And I might go a step further, and I would believe that other countries also would determine scholarships based on this kind of unified unified and a structured profile as compared to just doing a lot of things and having 20 activities. It's better to have limited ones, spend moderated and balanced time on them, but also structure them according to your interests and pursuits. Very, very well said, Pratnesh. I'd like to pivot this conversation slightly, of course, and I'd like to start with Remy, even though Australia is closed down for international students right now, is like parents more than students, of course. Students are very enthusiastic and they want to take on the whole world. Parents especially have this question about safety, about a cultural adaptation, whether students will be treated equally and fairly by those around them. And I know universities, of course, are quite sensitive places. Like we go through these guidelines very often. Both the culture and policy is very conducive, very anti-discriminatory, and so on and so forth. But just in terms of environments, right? Because students will step out of the university to into the real world to understand more about these situations and get a better like for work experience and for 100 other things, right? So in those things, of course, how do you suggest Indian students cope? What are these support mechanisms that are available in Australia, specifically University of Queensland? How it helps students in this regard?
Great. So, University of Queensland, especially, is a large university. We have over 53,000 students studying one time, with over 20,000 international students from 147 nationalities. So, if you really look at UQ, we are a very diverse student community. At the same time, if you really see where we are located in the city of Brisbane, which is the capital city of the state of Queensland. Again, in Queensland, we have over 2.4 million population, 28% of residents born overseas. So it is a very, very international community, very, very welcoming of international students. So if you really see, students so far has been very happy. And I think I'm also in a place where I'm working for a university which is located in a foreign country. I'm working from here. And the way the departments work together, the way we liaison with each other, I think it all it's not just for students. I think it is just for people who work there, who live in the campus, and it's a big community. And I absolutely love my working experience with my colleagues, and this has actually translated into a great working relationship, not just for us, but whether it be faculty, students, student services, or department-wise support. And also there are a lot more opportunity now with students studying virtually. We have something called study bubbles in a community that we started, where students who are in different parts of the world can connect with their own people. Okay, so now students are virtually starting communities and societies where they can still connect. So I think it is a very supportive environment. We actually put across the situations, and then we realize that we have actually done a great job so far. And in my experience, I never had one student coming and telling me that they have not received the kind of support that they expected. In fact, I've got good amount of feedback where students are really happy with what is happening around. And it is also for students to know that you need to be inclusive. Culture shock is definitely existing.
Exactly.
You go to, I'm also an international student. I studied in the UK. My experience of traveling was different. When I was a student, it was different. I worked with US universities before moving to Australia. The culture is different. So it is also for you to be feeling confident and, fight it out, create a space, be inclusive, and learn, and you will be absolutely comfortable. I think fear is inside, but if you're able to talk to people, there are good people around. And Australia is a very lively destination. As you would know, it is one of the major tourist destinations. And where we are located, Queensland is one of the uh, topmost tourist destinations, which attracts millions of tourists every year. So we will definitely be friendly in terms of the way we are. So absolutely no problem. Everybody's welcome to travel, have fun. Everything is good there. At least
Yeah.
so far, good.
So now that we're done with the neutral, let's go to the country which has a perception of being nice in general, right? Again, not a lot of parents are honestly concerned about Canada, Gaurav, because like not just because of the general like socio-political stability that the country has, but also because Canada generally is perceived to, or especially the major cities, do have a strong Indian population. So I would slightly pivot this question for you, and I would ask you that given that these circumstances exist, how do you as a student grow? Yeah, how do you as a student get out of that Indian bubble and truly experience Canada as a global destination where interact with diverse cultures and communities?
Right. Okay. So first of all, I'll concur with the thoughts that Ramya actually has mentioned. So yes, there are students, more than 42,000 plus students studying in University of Alberta in India.
Gaurav, I think we lost you. Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, my mic was on mute. Sorry about that. Yeah, so as I was saying that, yes, I concur with the thoughts of Remy, as what she has said. More than 42,000 plus students are studying at University of Alberta at any given point of time, out of which about 80% are for the UG programs. And they are from more than 159 countries studying at University of Alberta. It's a very diverse group which is there. Having said that, yes, I also understand that Indian community is the second largest community on campus. But in order to come out of that bubble, there are a lot of options and opportunities which students have. We have several student groups and student unions which are there. We have more than 500 clubs option which are available to the student that they can join. Now, these student clubs generally are managed by students themselves, and these ranges from sports to cultural activities to extracurricular activities and education clubs and whatnot. So these are the clubs which are there. So student can join that at their own will and their wish. So that is the one way wherein they can interact with the other student. Plus the accommodation. Students generally don't give a lot of emphasis on this fact. But if they choose to stay on campus accommodation, though it's not mandate, but if they choose to stay on campus accommodation, that is a place where they can interact with the students informally and can actually be friends for life. So that is a place wherein they can actually have a good amount of cultural exchange, I can say, and learn about each other and stuff. So that's very important.
Yeah, of course. And Pratmesh, again, with respect to the United States, of course, there's a lot of diversity in kind of the sociological phenomena that exists there. One state is not the same as the other, and of course, these are like tips that we as career counselors often imbibe to students, where we should apply to, where we no, not the best place to apply. But I just like, and it is, I understand this when I'm asking this, it would be an oversimplification and a generalization to some extent, right? But like, tell us about experiences that, of course, you and other international students have had in the US, in different parts of the US, with respect to the slightly tense and diverse socio-political and socio-cultural scenario there.
So I have not really studied in the US. I did my education from the UK, but from what I have seen and heard, from the students, from our students, in fact, studying there, it's been great so far. And US is again welcoming towards students, as you all saw, with the kind of things that they did for students this year. I mean, they issued the highest number of visas for fall 2021. And
Yeah, yeah,
it's again a melting pot, really. US campuses are known for the diversity they offer. So, you'll have a student, from China, you'll have a student from Ecuador, Ghana, all these places. And again, most US campuses, what I like about them are residential campuses, And again, they help in kind of kind of forming those bonds, lifelong bonds. Also networking that kind of helps when you're looking for jobs after you graduate. They also help you open up, and
yeah, yeah,
have different perspectives. Also, sometimes you have your own set of beliefs that you kind of go in with. And with the kind of students and with the kind of cultural exchange that happens, sometimes you are you are you're put in situations that make you challenge those beliefs, and that really
yeah,
makes you, I think, open and ready for the life ahead. So I think even if the situation is tense in some regions, or in some places
yeah,
it's not so tense, as a student, I think your focus should not be on those things. I would say your focus should be on your goals and what you're there to do.
yeah,
That's what I tell students. And there are certain things that you should kind of abide by as a student,
yeah,
and not be too adventurous also, being an
of course.
international student myself. So I mean, if you take care of these things, then I think the rest of the things fall into place. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. And like the next thing, of course, I've spoken to this specifically with representatives from Australia and Canada before, is about the part time work, right? And like again, I'd like to reiterate this because, of course, it's one of the most popular questions that are asked. that students, of course, want to reduce the pressure, financial pressure that they levy on their parents and their families, and want to get the professional experience that's going to put them on a career trajectory. So minimum wage for students, 20 hours per week. That's the norm that's followed in many places. Is that the same for Australia? Remy, I'd like to start with that. What is the work? How much can you work? How much can you earn? How does University of Queensland allow students to get these jobs and opportunities?
Yes, Vijit. So students are able to work 20 hours per week and 40 hours every fortnight.
Yeah,
And during vacations, they can actually work full time. So
yeah,
obviously, financial burden in terms of the living expenses students are able to manage. Again, it depends on their living standards. Generally, the cost of living would be an average of 15 to 20,000, or maybe sometimes plus or minus 3,000 here and there. But depends again on your living expenses that you can manage your funds with your part-time. And obviously the part-time wages are also dependent. If you work on campus, off campus, there'll be minimum wages that students would be getting.
yeah,
However, it still depends on where you work. So yeah, I think that's a great support so far. Our students have been able to manage their living expenses. If you take shared accommodations, on
yeah.
campus living can be a little expensive. Off campus together, they can actually manage well. Yeah.
Gaurav?
Okay, so at University of Alberta, as in fact as the Canadian universities in general, students are allowed to work part time when the classes are going on, which is 20 hours in a week, and 40 hours when the classes are not there, which is what Remy actually said. But I'll like to put a point here that if a student actually is traveling to Canada, wherein they're thinking that they will be able to manage their tuition fees specifically while working part time along with their studies, then that will not be possible, right?
Yeah,
In fact, what we tell our students is, if in case they are going with this thought, then that will be very difficult. I'll be honest with you. The
yeah,
curriculum of University of Alberta is very intensive. If you are focusing on your work to make sure that you are able to collect the fees to pay for the next semester, then that's definite that you will not be able to perform well in your curriculum, right?
for sure.
So the idea behind this is, yes, you are allowed to work part time or full time depending on the schedule of your classes and everything, but that should not be the idea. That should be just the thing to gain experience while you are as an international student. And apart from that, we do also offer all our faculties actually come up with the options of co-op. So co-op in
Yeah,
India, since you can compare it to an internship, the only difference
yeah,
is co-op are all paid. So at co-op at University of Alberta, co-op generally starts by the end of second year. The average duration is between 14 to 16 months, and that is the time when student is actually not studying; they're just working full time. So that is the time when they can actually earn a lot and save, because that is the time when you actually don't really have to pay the fees as well at University of Alberta. So technically, when you're doing co-op, you're just earning. That is the time you have the chance to get return on your investment, and of course, put whatever you have learned in your classes into practical and see what actually is working for you. And if something is not, then you can go back to your classroom and, of course, have a word with your professor and understand that this is something which I would like to be taught about again. So that's
yeah.
how things work.
Yeah. Pratmesh, before you start, I'd just like to deal with a few queries that are coming up. Again, criteria for scholarships in the United States. We've discussed this before, but again, take a minute to reiterate that. Having a good profile, having relevant and suitable activities that they're linked to each other, and are reflective of who you are as a person. Writing good essays and making a good, holistic application. If your SAT score is also on the positive side, SAT score only if it pulls up your profile, right? An SAT score is then advisable to submit. And of course, your school academics, whatever you have been scoring since the ninth standard, is important. But Pratmesh, specifically from you, I'm quite curious about this as well, because in the US, there's also the culture, or which could be honestly a popular trope, that people are able to work alongside college and pay for it alongside. So again, I understand that that's obviously not true in Canada for international students. But in the US, of course, I understand it's not fully true. But I want to understand till what extent and how much. Like, what is the possibilities of working alongside your undergraduate degree there?
Okay, so as an undergraduate student or as a student in the United States, let me first tell you that you're not going there for work, you're
Yeah,
going there for your studies. So, do not lose focus. Having said that, you are eligible to work up to 20 hours part time on campus, not off campus. and when the college is not in session, you can work up to 40 hours part-time on campus. Okay, now the wages that you get are hourly wages, and since there are so many states in the US, every state has a different rate for wages. So in Ohio,
Yeah,
for example, the rate is between $8 to $10 per hour, right? So you can only meet petty expenses, that arise, like your grocery. You can pay for your groceries, you can pay for your stationery, or some travel that you're doing within the state and stuff like that. It cannot pay for your tuition or your living. Nothing can kind of nothing can be, I mean, it cannot be enough to pay for all those things.
of
So
course.
would just like to highlight on that. And there are plenty of jobs available, and these are again designed to give you that experience of working, and to help you prepare for the professional life ahead. You can also gather some skills, like you can by doing these different jobs, like you can work with us at the undergraduate admissions office. You can work
Yes,
in the
yes,
student union. You can work as a campus ambassador, you can work at the library, you can work at the university's bookstore or coffee shop, and they help you kind of develop your communication, leadership, management, creative thinking skills, that again
yeah.
can be helpful for your future life. So yeah, US gives you those part-time casual jobs while you're a student, but please don't, I mean, focus on those, focus on your program, and if you have the time, if you can manage things, then go for these jobs.
Of course. Shazia, to answer your question, bachelor's degree in Canada, most degrees conventionally are 4 years long. Master's degrees, there are two types. There are some masters and of course the same goes for Australia and the US. Some masters are standalone MA or MSc degrees, which just culminate with you receiving an MA or MSc or MBA in some cases for that matter. These degrees typically range from 9 months to 2 years, depending on how soon you complete your credit and credit hours. And some degrees are not cumulative MA degrees; they are MA plus PhD degrees. These degrees are obviously longer, 3 to 5 years typically at least students take to finish an MA plus PhD. Uh, my next question, of course, is like in terms of how if in terms of students want to see education abroad as a method for settling in any country, right? If not permanently, especially for a few years. Firstly, is that a good idea? Yes or no, with respect to the kind of visa and work opportunities available, and what are the other end notes that you'd like to advise students with respect to that? Like, is that good? Is foreign education a pathway to that, or is foreign education a pathway to building your career in your own country primarily? I know this is a complex question and a personal choice to some extent, but yeah, I would like some insights and some some expertise on this from you guys. Gaurav, I'd like to start with you, of course, because I think Canada is one of the most simpler answers in this case.
Sure. So, Vijit, I think, as you said, this is actually personal choice, because if you see about the career opportunities now, and specifically if you talk about programs like engineering or, for example, sciences in particular, then there is no limitation of job options, not in India, not even in outside where you're going for the international education. So that boils down to the fact whether student actually wants to live. Now, if you talk about Canada in particular, after the undergraduate program, you are given 3 years of work permit, wherein student can actually work full time and anywhere across Canada and get investment on the returns that they are getting. So now it's come down to the actual choice of the student. That's what I can actually say here.
Yeah, very interesting. I think, of course, more complex answers from Australia and US. Remy?
It reminds of myself. So, my father wanted me to be a doctor because I come from a background where we are into medical clinics and all of this. Obviously, your father would want you to be a doctor. I was a fan of Bollywood movies and I loved watching Bollywood movies, and I really loved London because of that. So when I chose to study in London, especially so that I can really travel so much. But I also had a genuine interest in experiencing the culture of studying and learning, and the culture of meeting people around, opening up yourself to a lot of challenges, being independent, um, doing your own chores yourself when you're well supported and you have people doing it for you back in the country. So obviously, I think one thing that I would tell anyone and everyone is international education is a confidence that you carry throughout your lifetime. You want to make your life, you want to travel, you experience anything, I think that changes you completely as a person. So you want to build up your career or whatever that is, this actually answers a lot of questions for you, to be honest. So I think it is absolutely, like Gaurav said, it is completely a personal choice. Maybe it is too early for you to decide right now, but once you are there you will figure it out, I would say.
Yeah.
And you will still keep
But
figuring it out.
there's no barriers per se, right? There's no
There's
barriers
no
that are
barriers,
preventing
and
you.
yeah, your need could be something else, you're destined to be somewhere, but I'm sure international education will make it a little faster, I think,
Yeah.
because you then face your challenges quite quickly. You do not have time
Yeah.
to think,
Yeah.
should I do it, should I not do it? Okay, so obviously that is something that you learn with it, so I think
Thrown into the
it's,
bullpen.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
something that you discover.
Yeah. And Pratmesh, again, like any obstacles per se, or like it's a smooth thing. It's your personal choice. You can choose either after your degree. It's up to you, and what you want to do.
I think Remy answered it beautifully, and so did Gaurav. But I would like to add that with US, be careful. I mean, I'm not trying to scare you, but don't go with the thought of settling down. That shouldn't be your goal. Your goal, again, I am,
And don't say that.
emphasizing,
Yeah. Don't say
emphasizing.
that while you're getting a visa, especially.
Yeah, emphasizing on the fact that your priority should be your program and
Yes.
studies. And if in the process that happens, nothing like it, and
Yeah.
by all means, if you are paying so much, because it can be expensive, especially if the currency conversion is not in your favor. So if you're investing so much, and it's natural that you would want to kind of
Want to do.
work in that country. And US kind of also gives you that opportunity, as I said, with the OPT thing. So you get an opportunity to experience working in that field. So get some experience. If you like it, you can continue exploring it further. No one is stopping you again. If you want to come back again, India is a very interesting place to be in right now, so you can come back and serve your home country as well. So yeah, again, it's a personal choice, but all options are possible.
Yeah.
I would like to add
Again,
to that. Sorry,
of
Vijit.
course, of
I
course.
would like
Yeah,
to
yeah.
add to that because I would say if education is done right, all of these things you can do. Um, whatever your initial interest is, for it to sustain longer, obviously you need a good education, right? Like Pratmesh said, if that is right, everything else will fall into place for you.
Yeah, I think we'll take one last question that I just saw, and that's directed to you, Gaurav. Like scholarship opportunities in Canada, we have done US, we have done Australia. Why don't you tell us like what all we can do, especially at the University of Alberta?
Sure. Okay. So at the University of Alberta, there's actually a mammoth amount of scholarship that we give away. It actually are merit-based scholarships. So our scholarships are majorly divided into two categories. First one is the automatic scholarship or the admission-based scholarship. Second one is actually the application-based scholarship. So as the name suggests for both, the automatic scholarships are purely automatic. Students don't have to do anything. Each and every student who gets the offer letter from the University of Alberta is automatically assessed against the automatic scholarships available. Now, the deciding criteria for the automatic scholarship is their class 10th performance and the predicted grades of their class 12. And under this category of scholarship, they can get as high as about 15 to 16,000 worth of Canadian dollars. Coming to the other one, which is the application-based scholarship. So it comes up with a deadline. Basically, our admission cycle begins from 1st of October every year for the following fall intake. And same day, the application cycle for the application-based scholarship also gets open, and that is the time when student has to apply for the same. It comes with a deadline, so the deadline is generally the 15th of January, and in this, student has to fill up an application form which consists of about 4 to 5 long answer questions, which sees
Yeah,
the overall
yeah,
profile of the student. And based on that, our decision on the application-based scholarship is given. The maximum amount of scholarship that the student can get under the application-based scholarship is around 1,30,000 Canadian dollars worth of scholarship, which is a huge
wow.
amount of scholarship.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. All right. Application fees and do the universities offer waivers? Most of them do so. All this information is available in university-specific websites. A couple of things I'd like to end this thing with, of course, and thank you all. Thank you to the three of you for being here. I think we have discussed some quite informative information, and I'm sure viewers and our subscribers have had a very good time listening to this. Two things: foreign education is obviously fantastic, as all three of them have reiterated. You face new challenges. You explore more diverse and interdisciplinary curriculum, more relevant curriculum with respect to the job market and things like that. So all these three countries are exceptional destinations for Indian students to apply and study. Right? Of course, what is best for you, it depends on who you are as a person, what subject you're studying, and what you want to do eventually in life. And of course, you can reach out to us to know more and get that particular help. But beyond that, you have the contact information for the university representatives who have joined us. Please reach out to them with more questions. One great thing about foreign universities is how amazing they are with email responses and how precise they are in the kind of information that they provide. So these universities specifically, and in general, these countries as destinations are extremely conducive for Indian citizens and for Indian students studying undergraduate, postgraduate, research, taught. It's quite exceptional, right? So if you want to grow more as a person and develop an expertise in any of these fields of interest, you should seriously consider education abroad. And you have contact information for my office as well as these universities that we have provided to you. Thank you all of you for joining us. It's always a pleasure to do this, and I love talking to representatives and understanding what actually goes on behind the application process that we try to streamline to some extent. So thank you, Remy. Thank you, Gaurav. Thank you, Prathamesh. This is really fantastic, and I look forward to speaking with all of you very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thank you,
Vijay.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For sure.
Bye.